On this episode of Athletes Anonymous Presents The Fifth Down, we're here to discuss a little bit of the XFL, the Browns making a trade for Elijah Moore, Mecole Hardman now a Jet, all of the possible guys who will be joining the New York Jets, along with a certain quarterback whom Jalen loves, and we'll move over to some of the other rumors. But for now, let's get to that intro music. Welcome back to the podcast. I am your co-host, Keone McKeague, and with me as always are my longtime friends and co-hosts, Nolan Chang, Jalen Holston. Say what's up to the pod, boys.
Hello. Today's episode brought to you by M&M's.
How's it?
I wish.
As my Islander friends would say back in the day. Ka-chow.
What? Ka-chow.
I love that movie. Anyway, I mean, it has been a hell of a week for Jets fans, I guess, because that's about all we're hearing about in the NFL right now.
It is.
Specifically with a certain cornerback. So we're going to start off with that news first. Jay, I mean, how many guys need to be traded and or signed by that team before the person who is supposedly pulling the strings for them to get said players will finally sign with the team or get traded there? What are we doing here?
The Jets are getting masturbated into the biggest con of all time. Because here's what's going to happen. Green Bay is going to screw them over and not trade Aaron Rodgers by the time that we get to the fall season and we start doing the preseason. That's what's going to happen. And then they're going to have all these weapons and like Zach Wilson.
What?
Like that's what's going to happen. They're going to be the most loaded team without a quarterback in the NFL. That's my prediction. Because at this point, you could have signed at any time. You're sitting there saying, "Oh, it's actually the Packers, man. I don't have any." Shut the fuck up. Okay? Shut up, Aaron. Shut up. It's your ugly face. It's your fucking Zen bullshit. You wanted to go, you'd have gone. You're a bastard. You've now cancered 2 organizations, not 1, 2, into the ground. You. Just you. Nobody else. Only you. So, yeah, that's what's going to happen. Aaron Rodgers is going to screw the Packers because they gave away assets to New York for some picks, and then they have no idea about Jordan Love and their quarterback situation. They don't have any weapons left. Their defense is awful. And the Jets are going to be super loaded to win football games, but they have nobody to actually lead and win them games. So,
yeah. I mean, just enough said for that part of the conversation. Yeah, it's funny because I think Mecole Hardman, what else did they sign? They signed somebody
2 of his receivers from Green Bay that he was like,
right.
I can't throw to these receivers. Also, hey, can you
Lazard,
bring him over for me?
Yeah, it's such a weird situation because I don't think that has ever happened before. Actually, real quick before we move on, I did want to kind of get your thoughts on how do you feel about Mecole Hardman essentially choosing to go play for Aaron Rodgers' team as opposed to Patrick Mahomes. Like, I could not understand. Yeah,
just get out.
Like, what is the logic there? What are you expecting?
It's the same. I think we had this combo last pod where, like, just get out. You know what I mean? You're not really about winning. You want money. And again, I can't imagine where these players in the NFL are making so much money, even if you want to say they got to pay this guy and this agent and whatever, the amount of money that these NFL players make is more than most of us fans will ever sniff, ever dream about in our lifetime. If you're telling me that to live somewhat comfortably, you need so much more money than where you're at right now, you're full of shit. You're full of garbage. All right? You had it good. You had 2 rings, basically for free, with Patrick Mahomes. You were hurt all year last year when you were supposed to be the number 1 guy. Basically, you played like 6 games, maybe. Then the groin happened. We let you rest. You come back. You got hurt again. Not worth paying money for, friend. I'm sorry. And the fact that you fleeced the Jets out of a deal, I mean, good on you, I guess. But, like, there's the door. Sky Moore is right behind you, ready to go this year. Like, he's the exact same guy. Like, fast, can do the jet sweep stuff, can run the ball, if not better. Correct. Mm-hmm. And we also have Kadarius Toney. Like, whenever 87 retires, that's when I will actually be worried about the Kansas City Chiefs. Same thing I'm sure Patriots fans felt when Gronk left. Like, that's where we're at. So, if you don't want to get on the train, get more rings, solidify your career, bye. Go be an idiot somewhere else.
Tell me how you really feel.
I know, tough words.
You can watch us win another Super Bowl. It's fine.
Ooh, let them know, Jay.
It's fine.
Say it for the people in back.
It's fine. It's okay.
I'm gonna swing it over to you, Nolan, because I'm pretty sure that you had him for fantasy purposes. DeAndre Hopkins, right?
Indeed, I did.
Okay, all right. So DeAndre Hopkins requests a trade. Now he's in rumors to be possibly traded to the Buffalo Bills. They seem to be going pretty hard at going after him. I mean, we'll probably see more of what will happen as soon as the draft actually happens. But what do you think about the possibility of him joining a Bills wide receiver core and, you know, technically speaking, a championship-ready Bills team?
I mean, all reservations of, you know, we all have listened to Jalen's, you know, utterances of Josh Allen,
certain
right?
Guy over there.
But I think it's a nice little contrast in comparison to what we just discussed right now with Jalen. Hey, you don't want to win championships, you're just looking for a bag. Okay, goodbye. In the flip side of that, you have DeAndre Hopkins, who has an Arizona Cardinals team that doesn't look like they're going anywhere fast. They just retired J.J. Watt, correct? And then it looks abysmal over in Arizona. So for him to be requesting a trade, if it is the Bills, why not try to go to someone that could be most likely will be guaranteed a postseason run, right? Yeah. I'm not going to say how far they'll make that run.
I was just like, this is like maybe until they run into the Chiefs.
You know what I mean, right?
Well, you know why they're trying so hard to get him on the Bills, right? It's because we also are in contention for him to land. So they don't want the guys that have smitten them multiple times in the games that matter to get D-Hop. So I understand from the Bills' perspective. I think it's a fantastic move to give Josh Allen somebody complimentary to Davis, and that really will
Diggs,
be a
and
game.
Him as a core receiver.
That's a game right there. Woo, baby. Lord have mercy.
That looks pretty.
But they still have Josh Allen, so just remember that.
All right, there we go with the reservation. Right?
I was this close. I was this close to being positive on the Bills.
Full circle. Right? There we go. But yeah, I think it's a great business decision for him. You know, he came back midway through last season, or not midway, I would say a third into the season, and immediately hit the ground running with what was available to him. I drafted him pretty late and just held on to him, hoping that he would have that kind of season. Definitely came in and did his job from a fantasy standpoint. So I think absolutely, if the Bills are willing to make that trade and he is able to get on that roster and on the field, I think it's going to pay off in dividends for them at least.
Now, looking at this from the fantasy perspective, do you believe that he'll have a better or worse year in a more crowded Bills receiver core? Especially because you know that Stephon Diggs is still the number one there no matter what.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Stephon Diggs is, I think, mock drafted as like the number 10 pick in fantasies. So, I mean, that's difficult to say. We have a world where Hill and Waddle were able to both kind of play as wide receiver ones.
Very true.
And with a quarterback such as Tua, now, Jalen, do you think Josh Allen is better than Tua?
No.
Oh, shit. Okay. Well, anyways, moving on before he continues.
So what was your point?
My point being that if you have a quarterback who's been in the league enough, who's competent, don't answer, Jalen. I'm just saying the word. I am just saying the word. Stop it. Nope.
Intense word to drop with his name. That's all.
All I'm saying,
it's literally like the bare minimum word.
All I am saying is that
competent.
It doesn't hurt to have a few sous chefs in the kitchen.
Indeed.
All right. I think it's definitely it gives him more options. He doesn't have to worry too much about maybe the third receiver being the weakest link of the group and then not being willing to give him any scratch. And now he has 3 competent wide receivers who he can look for.
Yeah, very true. So we're going to move on to somebody else who's another big name rumor. Seems to just not be able to make up his mind on where he is favored to go because it seems like he's rumored to go damn near everywhere. The big rumor about him, though, that has been coming out that I wanted to kind of get you guys' idea on is obviously we're talking about Odell Beckham Jr., but owners want an incentive-laden deal for him, which essentially would require him to stay healthy for a majority of the year in order for them to have to honor the, contract or the guaranteed
signing
money
bonus
part.
or guarantee.
Yeah. So I'm curious what your thoughts are, Jay. First and foremost, where do you think would be his best landing spot? I'll say this: best landing spot outside of the Chiefs, because obviously they would be a great landing spot. But I'll say outside of the Chiefs. Where would you like to see OBJ go, and how do you feel about him basically being required to sign a contract that'll essentially take care of any sort of injury problem that he might face?
I mean, it is his best landing spot to come and do what Juju just did. It's a prove it deal. So
I do agree with that.
You
100%.
come in for 1 year, get a ring, and then you can just leave, and we don't care. You know what I mean? Like, that's what you can do. You can do that for us. You can do that for the Eagles. You can do that for literally any of those top 4 teams that played in the, playoff contention stuff last year. I think he's just at a point where it is a prove it deal. You had back-to-back ACL injuries. Why on earth am I going to drop a big money contract on you when at any given moment your knee's going to fire out on you? This doesn't make sense. And it's hard as players, I think, for them to kind of get in that mind space as athletes and accept a different role, especially because he was such a big part of the Rams Super Bowl run initially until obviously he tore his ACL in the Super Bowl, the game that they needed him most. But getting there was definitely a lot of Odell Beckham Jr. He was also a big part of Baker Mayfield being Baker Mayfield, although weirdly enough, played better after he got injured. That is a discussion for another day. But anyway, he was still a phenomenal piece of that Browns offense. Now, that being said, he's just not that guy anymore. You have not played football in 2 seasons almost. Like, you just have not played football. So yes, you better take whatever deal you want if you really want more money. You've got to invest in yourself if you're Odell Beckham Jr. You take a prove it deal with incentive bonuses that gets you your guaranteed money, which takes care of whatever life you want to live. And then after that 1 year deal, you get an extension and you go from there. Like, that is the strategy you have to pay for. You have to put the work in now to get your big payday later if you're really all about the money. Because if you're claiming that you are about it, that's the smartest move you can make right now. If you say you're not about it, then why the hell are you not signed somewhere? Because somebody's offered you a contract at some point. That is a guarantee. There's no way every team that you worked out for has not at least given you a 1 year prove it deal that maybe isn't the minimum you want or whatever, but they've heard the name Odell and they want you in the building. I know for sure Jerry Jones has fucking given you a deal and you didn't take it. So what are you doing? You know what I mean? It's more of like, when is Odell going to have that realization for himself? Yeah. But even on the Chiefs, I think he would be a 3. I don't think he would be a 1 or a 2 because they're really trying to prop up Tony to be our 1. So basically he'd be filling what Juju was with, Marquez Valdez-Scantling still got a year left on his deal as the 2, and then he would be right there.
He'd be a possession kind of guy. Yeah.
Yeah,
like,
big catch. You goal line him, fade him. You know what I mean? We wouldn't even have to use him that often because, again, we still have Sky Moore. So, I mean, a lot of pieces. And, of course, Andy's fucking Andy. So I'm sure he'd do something crazy where he's throwing a backwards lateral between the legs pass to Patrick Mahomes, and then he dunks it in the end zone for some reason. I don't know. It's literal globetrotter. Yeah, anything is possible at this point. I don't even know. It's crazy. But yeah, I think Odell will. I think the best landing spot personally, as crazy as it sounds, is Dallas because it's a big market town. It fits his profile, and he reminds me a lot of Terrell Owens. So I feel like that is kind of the parallel that I'm seeing right there. Like he has T.O. Well, I mean, pre-injury, I think he had T.O. potential, but I mean, here we are. So
actually, now that we're on the subject, real quick, T.O. Hall of Famer.
I consider him a Hall of Famer for sure.
Right. I do too.
I think it's a travesty that him and Chad Johnson got ran out of the league.
Exactly.
For being themselves.
It's like for essentially being what all receivers
are
right now.
It's crazy to me that both those players who were phenomenal wide receivers, like game-breaking wide receivers, got ran out of the league because they were too black, I guess, for the time. I don't know. It was weird.
As we're talking about guys who haven't yet landed anywhere, Nolan, I'm going to swing it over to you. We got, I was just throwing the first one over to you because we do have Ezekiel Elliott, who hasn't really landed. He obviously just got cut from the Cowboys, who we were just talking about. Firstly, how do you feel about kind of this generation of guys who we've been seeing more often than not requesting trades out of their teams? And second, for a guy like Ezekiel Elliott, who did request a trade and then they couldn't find anything and then he eventually got cut so that they could save money on their books, where would you like to see him go? And do you think that it's for a team worth it to sign a guy who was essentially a cancer to his former organization?
So if you guys could you fill me in on what made him a cancer?
Lack of production. Dude never stayed in shape. Never dependable. Disappeared in big games, making Dak have to be the sole provider of the offense, which then hurt his career because Dak will never has been that guy.
Well,
but yeah, he's essentially just the star power in his head didn't match the star production on the field.
Hey, and that's why Pollard took the RB1.
It is.
And absolutely showed out last season.
Like a fucking maniac, man.
One of them dudes.
Put that franchise tag on him, didn't they?
I'm just saying, we just had two names in this pod, I think, that will have some fantasy value. I'm not trying to throw anybody off, but Tony Pollard and Sky Moore, two names to be looking out for sure.
But if I remember correctly when I was looking at it, the rumored 3 teams that he's kind of coming down to decision are Bengals, Jets, and Jets, Bengals, and I think the Eagles, right?
The Bengals.
Putting on that on the blooper reel.
Yeah. Right on.
It's difficult. A funny part of it is if you were to sign with the Jets today, and then obviously somehow they can't get Rodgers, then he just fucked it all up right there. I don't think it would be a terrible idea if he maybe were to sign with the Bengals. What would he be, like the RB2 behind Mixon? No,
he'd be battling out for RB1, bro. Honestly,
but that's also dependent on if this is the Zeke that kind of comes in now with a chip on his shoulder, knowing that he wasn't that guy anymore, trying to come back into season maybe a little more in shape with a little more determination. When he
gets sure, but I got cut
Mixon
buff,
is actually a free
exactly.
agent right now.
So that Bengals, once again, we always say that they're going to be the AFC championship game against the Chiefs.
That's literally what it is.
If it is a little bit of a free ride on the way into that championship game, and then he can at least kind of bolster himself back up throughout this season, why not? I think the Bengals would be a lovely fit for him. But that's just me. Obviously, you guys have a little more intel on kind of what you think his game matches. But I think that would be a nice little fit for him.
I mean, yeah, there's no doubt that. I mean, especially if he's an RB2, that'd be pretty OP RB2. But yeah, it's more just he just can't seem to produce the way that he should produce, and he's been having a few struggling years. The last guy I want to get onto before I get to the big main point of today's pod is Austin Eckler. Throwing it over to you, Jay. Obviously, the Chargers are what they are. I'm not really entirely sure how they got to a point where their number one guy in Austin Eckler, and when I say number one guy, I mean over the QB, over the wide receivers, over damn near everybody on that team, literally the guy who carried the team last year, is possibly on his way out. They seem to be pretty tight-lipped on whether or not they're going to actually make a trade with him as the trade bait. I'm just curious, how do you think that we got to this point with the Chargers, and how do you feel about Austin Eckler possibly wanting out of the situation?
Well, I'll tell you how we got there. It's because every media outlet decided, for some reason, to anoint Justin Herbert in the same class as Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, and Josh Allen.
I swear we need a point. Just one little. I need one. I gotta get one.
This
man
points
counter
had not won a playoff game at all, and he choked it again, and has not won a playoff game since. He is literally Phillip Rivers 2.0. I said it the day he was drafted, and I will continue to say it because he's that bad.
Justin Sherbert,
indeed.
Some may argue Phillip Rivers.
The expectations got way up here. And the reality is they're about as talented down here. They are a mid-tier football team. Very big, very physical, very aggressive, will win a lot of games. But when it comes to shove, they do not have the tools to actually get deep into the postseason. Mike Williams is always hurt at the worst times. Per Keone's fantasy season. Yeah. Justin Herbert is a colossal choke artist, as he's shown over and over and over again.
Another guy I had on fantasy.
Their defense is always solid and always great. In fact, it's so good, we just stole one of their linebackers because that dude is the guy that sacked Patrick Mahomes all night on that Thursday night game. It was the only guy. I was screaming at the top of my lungs, and I'm so happy that we got him now.
Underrated signing for you guys.
Yes.
Yeah.
To replace Frank Clark, who just exited the building. So now we have him, Nick Bolton, Karl Loftus, and then Omafuhamawa, whatever, from the 49ers.
Oh my gosh. Omafuhamawa is one of the best guys out there.
It's like when you put like hot food in your mouth, you're like, hi.
Like you were saying Omaha while eating
Omaha
on the Chiefs. But that being said, there was too much hype and not enough reality checking of where the Chargers were actually at as an organization. So that leads to frustration, especially when every game just seemed to get choked away by both their coaching staff and by their QB1. So, I mean, if I'm Austin Eckler, I get it, bro. I get it. I'd want out too. So yeah.
Yeah. Could not agree more. We're going to get into our final topic for the day. Actually, excuse me. I do have one more before we get to that one. I wanted to touch on the XFL because obviously, as we all know, Dwayne Johnson took over the XFL.
Let's go Battlehawks, baby.
Is now running the organization and is now, basically he conducted their relaunch. They have had much more success upon relaunch than they did in previous years from before. Some are pointing to just better investors. Some are pointing to Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson himself for being a part of that kind of relaunch atmosphere. So I'm just kind of curious for you guys. I know, Jay, you've watched a couple of the games. Nolan, I'm not sure if you've gotten a chance to check them out a little bit. Yeah, so I'm curious, what do you think it is about this relaunch that has been successful, first and foremost? And second of all, do you think that this could be a viable way to sort of get into maybe kind of what the NBA does with the G League deal, where they kind of have like an organization that is tied to their organization that can kind of be like a training league for players to possibly get exposed to get into the NFL?
I think it's I think that would be a lovely idea. Obviously, it is a little different because they kind of they offset each other's seasons.
Mm-hmm.
So then you kind of have to look at it into, are you looking to have someone that's going to be playing all year round if it is someone that you decide to pick up for your full-on season for the NFL? Football is a game of wear and tear. Some players would probably be doing a lot more work than they need to. But granted, when you look at the idea of the XFL and the NFL, you're looking at players who didn't make the NFL for mainly a specific reason. So are they really going to be coming into the NFL and obviously hit the ground running, make a difference on the team that picks them up? To be determined, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that it is a fantastic idea if they are able to kind of create something where if it does mirror the NBA and has the season kind of going alongside it, it could pay off in benefits, but at the same time, the NFL is a much different game. Like you
right
have
now,
a
I
whole-
believe the biggest reason for the offset is obviously just the cost, because
Gotcha.
trying to match up at the exact
Yeah.
time during the NFL season would be a lot more costly for them.
But yeah, football is a very lengthy sport. Understanding what the playbook is going into each week, where you have like your, notepad runs, you have your film, you have your kind of study group, things like that. It's a lot more meticulous in comparison to what the NBA is doing. So it is a lot more difficult to say, oh, we just lost Mike White. We don't want to play Zach Wilson. We need to pick up a quarterback now. Doesn't really make much logical sense to pick up a quarterback from an XFL team, bring him in, and then all of a sudden he has to learn everything and make sure your team is still successful. I don't think that is necessarily going to work.
It's funny that you say that, because I was going to throw the perfect first example over to Mr. Jalen Holston with Mr. PJ Walker, who actually did come over from the XFL, did successfully turn his tenure from the North Carolina Panthers into a contract that was fully guaranteed, and now took a fully guaranteed contract with the Chicago Bears.
Okay.
So your thoughts on sort of the idea of using it as sort of a farming system for the NFL, if they do go that route, as opposed to just being strictly a competitor with the league?
I would like it to be more of a farm. What I don't want, though, a little bit different from the NBA, is it to be tied to specific organizations, because then I think it loses a little bit of its unique separation from the league. And you don't have as much diversity in fans. Like for myself, like I get to root for the St. Louis Battlehawks, which is a St. Louis team that I'm living in, but I still get to have my Chiefs, right? I don't want to just root for just the Kansas City D League also. Like it's cool to have the diversity of fans being able to show up and, get involved in these games the way they have been. And it's been like, I know for at least for us, like getting the Battlehawks back after COVID was like new lifeblood in St. Louis, because we have our MLS team out here now, and then the Battlehawks came back. So all these games have been packed, like sold out, because
I will note,
love
though,
the XFL.
I will note with the NBA, though, unless a player is specifically signed to a two-way deal where they can hop back and forth between the main team and the G League team, any team around can sign a player if they're willing to go. So it's, I mean, I get what you're saying, but at the same time, if it is something that kind of brings a little more team spirit into bringing a team and having them kind of just tethered to a NFL team, I think that could be beneficial in certain ways, right? But I get what you're saying. Like it shouldn't have to be the exact.
The only reason I'm really going to disagree, and I do kind of see the fandom part from Jay's perspective, where it's like you only have a St. Louis team in the XFL. You don't really have the St. Louis team in the NFL. But I was just say, from my standpoint, I wouldn't mind if they had an XFL Honolulu team. Just saying, putting it out there. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson calls us up. But you know what I mean? Like,
I'm so shocked he didn't make one. Is that not crazy to you?
You're
from the land, bro.
Yeah, come on, man.
But you're really dropping the ball here.
I mean, I'd imagine there's some but come on. You're Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. You claim us all the time when it's convenient, but then all of a sudden, when you can freaking make a difference, you don't make the difference.
All of a sudden, you disappear. Those tattoos are looking a little funny to me, buddy.
He just starts smearing one day. He's like,
oh dear. Oh.
All of a sudden, like a fourth square pops up and it's him. He's like, "What'd you say?"
It's like, and our special guest for the day. Like, I surprised you guys.
I would shit myself. If he just
Legit,
popped
and then you just hear me like, yeah. Nolan was saying something about how Black Adam was just like lame.
I did not.
I had two hands in the air and I celebrated Black Adam.
Yeah.
And I was pissed for you, Dwayne. I think you should go full on WWE on that motherfucker, James Gunn, right now.
I mean, the hierarchy did change, and it wasn't even your fault, man.
I can't wait. I can't wait till we get the post credits again. Anyway, back to the XFL. But yeah, I do agree with your points. I definitely think that it just makes sense. You know, you have the capital, you have the sort of system built in. You can still get the fandom and still make money, make profit off of these lower end teams or whatever, and make it something that's good for both the players and the organizations.
I would also like to see a structure similar to Major League Soccer, where nothing is tied to any team. However, we can finally get some diversity in who enters the NFL and who goes into XFL as regular. What is it called? Not regulation. Shit, not consolation either. It's I forget what it's called. But essentially, if you're a bottom four team at the end of the season,
you drop out.
You drop out, and the top four teams get
up.
put in. And if you do well, you stay. If you don't, you drop. And I think that would help with a lot of diversity issues with the orgs and the teams, like that kind of thing, like mixing up players. It would keep the playoffs fresh.
Too.
Kind
of that structure where it would help people from like
relegation. Sorry, yeah.
Yes.
So I would like to see, I think that's a potential structure that would look really well for the NFL and the XFL both. Still getting a lot of money put in from both pots, still getting players deals that they need. It helps my argument of keeping fandom and not having things linked directly to organizations. So it's really an all-around win from where I'm sitting. So, yeah.
That was two fantastic XFL. If you're listening, we literally gave you the solution. Yeah, you're welcome.
I'll take $450 million for that.
Speaking of $450 million, let's move on to the quarterback who wants a little under half of that. Lamar Jackson. Now we've gotten the Twitter sort of official word from Lamar Jackson himself. For those who are unaware, Lamar Jackson is representing himself in this situation. So as far as negotiations for contracts go, it is himself who is doing the negotiating. From Twitter, he did post something, and I read it to the guys here earlier, essentially stating why he will be moving on from the organization, barring some sort of miracle in which they do honor his contract. First and foremost, going to throw it over to you, Nolan, because I know that Sir Jalen Holston got some things to say about this. But from the organizational standpoint, do you think that the Baltimore Ravens owe it to him to pay him the contract, first and foremost? And second, because of his injury history, do you see that playing into these negotiations or any sort of future negotiations he might have with other teams?
First and foremost, yes, I do think that they should hand him his bag. Kind of talked about it on our After the Buzzer segment. Go ahead and check it out. Kind of regarding Damian Lillard. If you're going to be signing a player that you want to be that guy for your team, the main star, the marquee name, you should be doing everything you need to make him happy, if that is your goal. If you have a MVP player on your team who is still, when healthy, going to give you everything he's got and make a productive use out of himself, then you owe it to him to make sure that you're filling that roster with weapons that he can use, right? So I think that alone, in my perspective, that he should get paid what his contract is detailed. Moving forward from that, negotiations with other teams, I don't think any other contract with another team is going to reflect exactly what he just got paid from the Baltimore Ravens, because football is a sport of short careers for different reasons. If you are showing that you're a little more injury prone and can't necessarily play a full season for whatever
Mecole
reason
Hardman.
what? I think that it's going to be definitely something that's looked at as, hey, we're going to give you this much because of this, this, and this. Obviously, it's easy for us as non-millionaires, multi-millionaires to say, yeah, I just got a fat bag. Of course, I'll take a pay cut for this next team that wants to sign me if I have a chance at getting a championship. But that's not how professional athletes think. So at this point, he's done a lot of public speaking on what his goals are, which is to win a championship, right? To bring a championship to whatever team will have him. And I think that needs to be in the forefront of his mind as he goes into these negotiations, because if he goes into there thinking that I am that franchise guy who's going to bring butts into the seats and I'm an MVP, you're looking at it from a past point of view rather than what you're going to be doing from here on out. So for him, have a little bit of humble pie as you go into these negotiation rooms. See what they're actually willing to offer you. If it isn't something that's completely fleecing you as a MVP caliber player, then let's go for it. Let's do it. If you have a good shot at it, hey, if the Jets don't make the deal, what if they trade for you instead? Huh? You never know. And it's bolstered up with players that are meant to be for a winning team. So whatever ends up happening, I just hope he kind of goes into it thinking the right mindset.
Is that the team you think you'd like to see him go to if it isn't the Ravens that he returns to?
Hey, if the Packers decide that they want to fuck over Aaron Rodgers, I think that would be a fantastic idea for the Jets to go get him.
Big old fuck you, Aaron Rodgers. I'm here for it.
Swinging it over to you, Jay, as the resident football fan. I want to.
He walked me right into that one. I'm sorry. I could not take the bait. It was there.
It was there. You're right. So we kind of heard Skip and Shannon's rant on what Lamar Jackson is going through right now. There does seem to be sort of a pattern when it comes to these sort of more mobile quarterbacks, as far as how they're treated around the league, being sort of blackballed in a sense where they are not getting signed to teams because, and for whatever reason, they always want to throw in because they could possibly get injured, even if injury history isn't there or whatever. And even if they had past accomplishments, like Lamar Jackson himself, do you think that there is sort of a systemic issue and that's why we can't get Lamar Jackson onto a team? Or do you think that this has more so to do with the sort of crazy contract that Deshaun Watson signed, and how that has affected sort of everyone's thinking on signing a quarterback to that much money, and worrying about that possible outcome as far as Deshaun Watson's entire story?
It is indefinitely a systemic issue. The unfortunate part is that Deshaun got the deal before Lamar. And I'll break this down into bits. The systemic issue is that we still see mobile quarterbacks, especially Lamar Jackson, the Deshaun Watsons, that are more active runners, Justin Fields, etc. Predominantly owners are still white in the league. So that is what they see. They see black quarterback, run fast, get me money, because win games, more fans. And so what happened was when the Browns owner, who whatever his bias was, saw Deshaun Watson went out, said, I don't care. Black guy, run fast, get me money, quarterback for my team. I'll pay whatever I want because my organization sucks.
Sorry, the caveman thing got me.
That's literally the mindset of these owners that are still stuck in this slave mentality, man. I give 0 ounce of respect to them. You know what I mean? And Brett Veach is, he's not any different. He's just more cheap and more goal orientated. So here we sit in this group of majority of the owners in the league are still elderly-ish of age, come from a very older thinking time in their mindset. And so here we are where the Ravens have a former MVP, have a class citizen, have a upstanding young man that has done anything and everything since they drafted him to bring the organization back to relevance after it had fallen apart. It really had. The Ravens were a mid team after Ray Lewis retired. That was it. Mid. They got rid of Joe Flacco. Lamar got drafted, and he's taken the reins ever since. And he was off and running. No pun intended. But here we are. Deshaun Watson, like I said, just had the better timing. If he had still not been signed, I guarantee you Lamar Jackson would have taken that first deal that the Ravens got him. But now, because he has set that precedent, he is not going to allow himself to feel less than by these white owners that don't want to pay him money. All that being said, suck it up. Because the argument is, you have missed the most crucial games the last 2 seasons because you were hurt. And it's because of how you play the game. You do not want to develop as a passer. Some of that is systematic because the Ravens run a similar offense to the Bears, and it's the same concerns I have for Justin Fields right now, right? Like, he run fast. Make him run. We win game.
Stop it. You already got me the first.
And so that's kind of the fault of where he's at. And I think it speaks even more that Robert Griffin III, out of all the people, was the first one to come defend him after that playoff game.
Shout out to RG.
Posting the picture of what happens when you let that system push you into doing something that is not beneficial for you in your career. Because we would still be talking about Robert Griffin III had he not gone out there. I guarantee you. He would be up there in that conversation with Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, a little bit older, obviously now, but Robert's game was not running the football. It wasn't even that much at Baylor. He was a great passer of the football.
Agreed.
And had he not got injured, guaranteed he's up there in that conversation. Still running the show in Washington, still making them a playoff perennial team. But because the system put him out there and said, you better get out there, otherwise we ain't going to give you your money. Go dance for us. Here we are. So,
can you imagine the league with Andrew Luck and RG3 back in the just doing the thing again?
No, that'd be crazy. That'd be crazy, man. But yeah, it's just a sad situation. I think at this point, I agree with Nolan. He's got to eat some humble pie and just kind of understand where the league is at. The ramifications of that Deshaun Watson deal are going to be lasting and permanent.
At least 10 years, it set us back in the quarterback realm, especially. Yeah, for sure.
Because what people don't understand is what that did to their organization. And the Browns will never recover from it, ever, financially. Essentially, they're banking on Deshaun Watson pulling them from the rubble, and he's never really proven to be that quarterback, even in his best years with the Texans. So it's a shame. It's a shame that we're here with Lamar Jackson, and he does need to eat some humble pie. You got to look at yourself in the mirror, dude. Like, you straight up missed the most crucial games the last 2 seasons. And you didn't make the playoffs year you won your MVP. So, like, you got to figure out a way to be a better passer of the football and save yourself. Make a business decision.
Evolve. Adapt.
Evolve. Yes. And take a deal and go run the show somewhere. Again, it goes back to that same argument that I had earlier. There's no possible way that your lifestyles require that much money. There's no way. Nope. No way. 0% chance. You can take care of everybody in your family for that 100. I think it was like 150.
Yeah.
I think the Ravens deal that was 100 million under was like, it was still like 140, 150 million guaranteed on the contract. Crazy. There is no fucking way that you can't take care of your entire family on that.
Tell you what, if I had that much money, I'm off the grid, man.
Bro.
Find me in the mountains living in a cabin.
That's what I'm saying.
I was like, wow, dog.
You won't find me with that much money. Ain't no
will
way.
create my own internet so I can still
Like
do
we're still doing.
podcasts
We're
from
still
the
doing. I
mountains.
was to say we're still doing a podcast, but you haven't paid for any of it. You're just like
Exactly.
like you just have fantastic equipment
I
in
just
your
show
little
up in like Gucci
studio.
shirts. Oh, hello, gentlemen.
So
Good to
So,
see
yeah,
you again
that's-
on this lovely.
that's where I'm at
Sunday.
on it. I think I
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
I want to have positivity and say, hey, he'll find a team. But at this point, I think he's going to end up like, Colin Kaepernick and Tim Tebow, like all these others that have just kind of weirdly been blackballed out of the league. Like that's where we're at.
What is his ideal situation in your mind? What team do you think is the ideal situation for him?
The one that we've argued 100 million times that you refuse to just open your eyes and fucking believe in.
It's funny because I was going to say I don't want him going to, because I know
The
that
Steelers.
they've talked about him possibly being traded to the Falcons, who are supposedly working on a deal with him. And I do like his fit with the Falcons, but I
Succeeding
am
Michael
worried.
Vick. I like it. Yeah.
I am worried that he would go to a situation where he would have a team that isn't ready to compete right off the rip, and then that would in turn be like, oh, see, what we were talking about, we already knew he can't do it because he's on a team that's not ready made for a championship. And as we know, it's a team sport. It does take an entire organization, does take an entire team to win. So I'd be a little hard pressed to see him go to a team where I don't think he'll compete right away.
Washington just got a guy that's pretty good at running an offense. Studied under a guy named Andy Reid. Got some good weapons. Got a solid defense.
We should have like a drink.
competitive
Every time
with
something's related
Taylor
to
Heineke.
the Chiefs, we take a shot. Every
You're
We
time.
welcome.
should actually. That would be a good. That would be a good
Drink
time.
this-
This just
And by
happens
the
to
end of
be a new idea that I really hadn't thought of because I was so hell-bent on the Steelers. But now that I'm really sitting and thinking about a great fit for Lamar, Bieniemy is going to be your head coach in probably a year, give or take. That's why he made the lateral move to go there as the assistant head coach, right? Air quote. It's really his team now. Ron Rivera's just a fucking body. We all know this. I mean, imagine the redemption story for Washington. That they colossally screwed up with RG3. They can get a Lamar Jackson
Wow. Yeah.
and reinvigorate that franchise with Eric Bieniemy. You go from Pat Mahomes to Lamar Jackson, step down, but it ain't that big a step, my brother. You're right there.
Well, like I said, the last pod, I wish I just had the national anthem to play in the background. Just
Always
every time. All right, just took it off. Anyway, I think that'll do it for us here after just what was a fantastic discussion on the NFL and what is going on in the world of football. But I'm going to throw it over to you guys first. Nolan, where can the people find you?
You guys can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Twitch at NolanKYT, NOLANKYT.
And so, Jalen Holston, where can the people find you?
You can find me on Instagram at @RPyJalen, Twitter at Jalen Holston, and Twitch at MochaThanos_LGG.
And you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Twitch at KONE. That's KAYOHKNEE. And you can also check us out on Instagram at The Poi and Soy Podcast. I think that'll do it for us here on Athletes Anonymous presents The Fifth Down. And as always, it has been a pleasure. It has been a joy from all of us here at Poi and Soy.
Good vibes and love, everybody.
Bang,
Aaron
bang.
Rodgers sucks. Just remember.